I pointed out at the beginning that the whole subject falls between two stools, because as a whole, neither the clerical professions nor the medical profession are ready for it. And this is true even of that aspect of the medical profession which is strictly psychiatry. The divorce of psychiatry and religion, and it is generally speaking a divorce, there are exceptions to this, where clergy, for example, in many theological schools are trained in psychiatry, and there are a number, a smattering of psychiatrists who are members of some kind of religious group. But by and large, psychiatry is attempting to be a pure science without any religious commitment at all. And I get the feeling again and again, and I talk to a great many psychiatric groups, and I talk to them endlessly about methods of therapy and this, that, and the other. But I realize sort of it with a funny intuition that they are completely superficial. They don't even know what therapy is, what they're aiming at. And so often, this is not always the case, therapy means success in getting a person to behave like everyone else, and to give him the same sort of tastes that everybody else has, so that he's a safe norm. But even when this is not the case, and many therapists, say, who follow Maslow, Carl Rogers, and our most brilliant men, I still get this feeling that psychiatry is dying on the vine for lack of any metaphysical foundations.
Didn't care for the overlooked first.
Now, I said I was going to say again something about statistics.
And tried to burn it down.
Such statistics as there are showing up today shows that psychiatric treatment, by using other methods than the drugs they're using in silence to quieten people down, psychiatric treatment is extraordinarily ineffective. Samples show approximately that of any control group, 1/3 of the psychiatric patients recover from their symptoms in 3 to 5 years, and 1/3 of patients under the care of a general practitioner receiving no psychiatric treatment also recover in 3 to 5 years. And those who were under the treatment of the psychiatrists came out a good deal poorer financially. I don't want to say this in a way of belittling the seriousness and the skill with which many psychiatrists are trying to study their problems. But they do have an abominably superficial concept of the human organism and of the human mind. One would think that a psychiatrist would be eager above all to explore every possible modification and state of human consciousness. He should be expert. He should know his way around inside all of them. Just as a linguist wants to master many languages, so a psychiatrist should master many madnesses and many mystical states. He should run the whole gamut from mystical vision to catatonic schizophrenia and know them all from the inside. Because then he's in a position to communicate with his patients. He cannot communicate while he remains a mere professor of psychiatry. See? Psychiatry is not something that you can study like the history of Persian pottery. And it's all out there, and it's objective, and so on, and so on. And you never have to get involved. To be a therapist effectively, you have to be right on the inside there. You have to get mixed in with it. And even though you may lose a certain objectivity and scientific impartiality by doing this, what you've got to acquire is the art of being able to get involved and then come out again and be scientifically impartial and then get in again. And that's difficult, but it's worth trying. But the reason, you see, the psychiatrist is afraid so often to get involved because he's scared of losing his own sanity. And he knows, that we walk on pretty thin ice so far as our sanity is concerned. And so don't muck around with that. He's seen too many of his colleagues who worked for a long time in asylums who had to be quietly removed to another asylum. Happens all too readily. But it is the fear of insanity, more than anything, which makes one insane. The fear of getting lost in all those strange corridors. Ever had dreams where you're going through mazes, corridors, wondering whether you'll ever get out, whether anybody will ever find you? Well, crazy people have an awful time with that corridor syndrome, because they are the corridors of the mind. Therefore, there is a certain protection of one's sanity in being able to go into various states. And above all, what I said a moment ago, was that the thing that strikes me about psychiatry so forcibly is its lack of a metaphysical foundation, in which, you see, it is simply imitating the fashionable point of view of scientism in the 19th and early 20th centuries, to push across the point of view that this universe is trivial. It is nothing but, whatever you want to say, nothing but something or other. But definitely nothing but. Desperately important to get everything down to nothing but, so that we can say it. No mysteries left about it. It's so simple. No? And that's a manifestation of hostility, you see, of hatred of life, lying under that. Because the people were too afraid of letting themselves go to be able to admit that they could look at this world and say, wow, look at that. Isn't that marvelous? Oh, you're just ignorant, you. You think these things are marvelous, but it just shows you not sophisticated. Because you see, one of the games of aristocracy in Europe was always to look bored. And so there are all sorts of, you could put a whole history together of how people copy the attitudes of their superiors in order to get one up on them. So if to look bored was a mark of extreme aristocracy and great wisdom, the scientific world, which was a parvenu then, imitated a bored attitude to everything so as to gain its status, or involved in gaining its status. And so they had no reason to be bored. They were just imitating being bored. And the aristocrats had some reason to be bored. They had seen everything, they'd had all pleasures, they were blasé. So, psychiatry, in turn, picked up the attitude, it's nothing but, it's just the libido or something, and or it's just mental mechanisms, or it's just neurochemistry, or something like that. One of the funniest things about LSD is that maybe it's just neurochemistry. But boy, when you get inside, neurochemistry is something. You think, chemistry, matter, good heavens, what of your nervous system? You suddenly, it is like a conducted tour inside the nervous system. But you begin to realize that the nervous system is one of the whammiest things going. It's fantastic. You can't just dismiss it as a nervous system. It's some nasty porridge in a bottle. So then, this is the thing. I think that the crucial point that has to be developed before we can handle these substances intelligently is a medico-religious rapprochement. And that means reforms on both sides. And they're beginning to happen. You know, you're probably aware that there's a huge theological ferment going on in both the Catholic and Protestant churches and among the Jews. The top's blown off. There are occasional references to it in the paper, but my clergy friends are thinking things today that they couldn't possibly have been thinking about 10 years ago. They're as revolutionary as almost any group I know. You should talk to the local rector here in Sausalito, or any crowds of them all over the place. Things are happening. And what is essentially happening is that they are consciously facing the fact that they need a kind of religion which is much more profound than anything they've hitherto been dealing with. And they are open to the dimension of religion which has been consistently ignored for centuries, which I'll call the mystical dimension, of at last admitting that religion is not just believing certain ideas and following certain patterns of behavior, but must indeed involve a transformation of consciousness. Not in the sense of an emotional blowout like a revival meeting, but something which involves a crucial change in the sense of human identity. There is therefore weaving together at this time a whole pattern of movements. More and more it becomes, in the biological and ecological and physical sciences, clear that the individual is inseparable from the cosmos. That after all, you are an expression of everything that's going on. You're not just something that rattles around in this universe that came into it as a stranger from somewhere else. And so that behind the facade of everyday consciousness, there are depths of oneself, just as truly oneself as your own will, which altogether go beyond your individual organism. And that we can become aware of these depths, and as we do so, become delivered from being plagued by impermanence and death and temporary suffering. The psychiatrist has to know this too. Because if he sits in his office and has nothing in his belly, that is what I would call the certainty of eternity, somewhere here. He's really just as neurotic as the person he's sitting with. And is putting on a mask attitude, looking wise, playing the scientific role, distance of objectivity, not get involved with the patient, use all the little tricks, when he's really wet behind the ears. You learn a whole bag of tricks. Even if you've been through a didactic analysis yourself, you can just have a whole domain of trickery. Therapeutic gambits with very little underneath. So I think that some psychiatrists should be ready to take their own medicine. I mean LSD. And just for an introduction to the realization that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in your philosophy.